Reddit. What event at your job made you just say frick this, I quit? I got accused of stealing a salad. I worked as a cashier at a grocery store while in high school. Because they had scheduled me 1/2 hours, I only qualified for a 15-minute break, not a 30-minute. So I spent the first 10 or so minutes of my break on the phone with a mechanic working out issues with my car. This was before I got a cell phone, so this was in the office on a landline. I then run back to the little cafe near the back of the store that has a salad bar and make a quick salad, which you weigh and price there. By this time I had about 5 minutes left on break, and the manager was very strict about not going over your 15 minutes. 1 minute over resulted in being written up. So I stand at the cafe register for a good minute or two, even shouting hello, and no one is to be found. I quickly eat my salad, and then take the sticker up to the front registers to pay for the $1.99 salad. I go back on the clock, and about 20 minutes later I am called into the office. They say a situation has occurred, but don't tell me what. They said they are sending me home for the day. So I come back in the next day for my shift, and they call me into the office again. In the office is the store manager, the assistant manager, the office manager, the cafe manager, and my shift supervisor. Mind you, I am a 16-year-old kid at their first job who had never been in any sort of trouble. They accuse me of stealing the salad because despite purchasing the salad, as our records do indicate, you consumed the salad before the purchase. I explained to them how the cashier at the cafe was nowhere to be found, and how if I wanted to eat during my break at that point, I would have had to eat it back in the cafe and then pay for it up front. I did apologize, though, and let them know it would not happen again. They tell me to go home, and that they will contact me tomorrow regarding if I keep my job or not. I left in tears. When I got a hold of myself, I realized how ridiculous the whole situation was. All the managers in the store standing in the office, arms folded, staring me down. A simple warning would have been sufficient, but they acted like I was swiping $20 out of the register or something. I go back in, find the store manager, and tell him I quit. He told me he was going to keep me, as he believed in giving second chances to people who mess up, and I tell him I'm good. I won't be coming in anymore. I'm now 31, and a nurse, and have seen nurses go home with a narcotic in their pocket and get in less trouble than I did over that damned salad. I've definitely left jobs in tears before over petty crap. Clearly those guys thought they were tough badass big CEO bosses. Instead they were just scrap pie cafe idiots. I need a summer job while in high school, so I applied at a local grocery store to bag stock clean. My first day there was some sort of confusion as to what I was supposed to do or to whom I was to report. I was sent to the front counter where the customer service manager gave me a till and told me to open a register. Mind you, I'd had zero training on a register. I didn't even know how to put the till in it, for frick's sake. I told the lady this and was told to go do my job. Within about 2 minutes at the register there was a line several deep, and I'm just standing there with the till in my hands. The customer service lady comes storming over asking why I had such a line, and I tried again to explain to her that I was supposed to be a stocker or whatever and that I knew nothing about operating a register. She called me stupid in front of the customers, so I handed her the till and told her to go frick herself. Walked down the street in my uniform and got a job at another grocery store. Almost the same thing happened to me, but fortunately I didn't get called stupid. My first day of training they just threw me on a register. I asked for help and they said I'll send someone over and never did. I walked out and didn't come back. I got a good story for this one. When I was in my late teens I got a job at McDonald's inside a mall. On my first day, on the closing shift, I was asked by a lazy manager to empty the grill grease traps into large garbage sacks, quadruple bag them, and toss them down the garbage chute. Mind you, this was not the appropriate way to dispose of the grease. The right way required a longer process of taking the grease traps, pouring them into a container on wheels, then taking that down the freight elevator, and emptying into a big grease dumper. This process took about 20 minutes, but the manager wanted to get out of there ASAP because she said she had a date. So here I am on my first night of this job, and I'm now waddling like a penguin down the back food court hallway with two giant with heavy garbage bags full for Mickey D's grease. Before I get to the end of the hall, both bags split wide open and all of that oil, burger chunks, chicken McNuggets, fish fillet pieces, etc. Just completely slather the entire corridor. It smelled awful. I went back into the store and told the manager, who screamed at me, called me useless and told me I had to stay with her to clean it up off the clock. I said, "You're out of your mind, lady." I quit and threw my hat at her. The next day the store manager called me and asked me why I had walked away from the job. I told her the story and she subsequently fired that assistant manager and told me to come back, and I ended up working there for about a year or so. Satisfying. Frick that I wouldn't have cleaned it either, lol. At my old job, this guy didn't like his salmon burrito, so he told me to come closer like he was gonna whisper something, and then he spit regurgitated salmon, tortilla and whatever else was in the burrito right onto my face. I may have overreacted by cussing at him, but I quit before my old boss could fire me. I had a customer throw a drink in my face because it was flat. I didn't notice the CO2 needed changing, and my boss packed up their dinners personally and sent them on their way. He said it was on the house because they weren't welcome back because no one treats his staff like that. I worked for a medical supply company that made respirator tubing that removed moisture from airlines. I was responsible for braiding a protective cover over the tube itself. It involved 8 very loud machines in a soundproof room. I was one of only 3 people who could do it. Me, a co-worker who was on maternity leave, and my direct supervisor who hadn't done the job in 2 years since they soundproofed the room. In the summer the soundproofed room would get up to 90 degrees and I was required to wear a lab coat as part of the uniform. I made an argument that with the coat on I was sweating my butt off, and that the sleeves kept getting caught on the machine. So the president of the company said I didn't have to wear it in the room. So I was taking a day off. I put in for it a month ahead of the day. I made sure that the company would have enough tubing for the day plus extra. And I get a call from my buddy who worked there with me that my direct supervisor was talking crap about me and how I whined about working in 90-degree room wearing an extraneous layer of clothing that could potentially end up getting me hurt. I went in the next day, saw that all the tubing was used. I told the supervisor that it would take me a few hours to make more. She said, "I don't appreciate you neglecting your job." So I said, "I don't appreciate you talking behind my back about crap that doesn't concern you. I have 2 weeks vacation. I'm taking them starting in 10 minutes. Consider this my 2-week notice." I packed up my stuff in my locker and left. My friend calls me an hour later. Dude, she's bitching about how hot it is in there. I told him no crap. That's why I took off the coat. For my brother, it was when the boss knew he had no other option but to walk an hour to work. Let him walk the hour in 105 Fahrenheit heat only to tell him, "Sorry, too hot to work today. Go home," and then call him as soon as he got back in the front door of the house and say, "Change my mind. Come back in." BTW, you get to stand outside wearing the mascot costume. He found a new job rather quickly. He went to concert. I got a temp job at a credit card company. The training was almost non-existent. We were enrolling card holders in the payment protection plan. Essentially, you pay a monthly rate, then if you lose your job down the line it allows you to miss some payments and not accrue interest, etc. Most people never use it, so they don't want it on there. We were told we were expected to add it unless the customer explicitly said no. Maybe, add it. I'll think about it, add it. I don't think so, add it. I think they hoped people wouldn't notice and they could blame the rep if a customer did notice it. I drove out there on day 2 and just sat in the parking lot. I couldn't get out of my car. After sitting there for a while I went home, called the agency and told them to find me something else. I was young and naive, so while I felt it was wrong I didn't realize it was probably illegal until many years later. Found the Wells Fargo employee. I worked in retail in college. A district manager was visiting our shop and trying to resolve a problem between the store manager and the rest of the staff. We were in a group, discussing the issues, and the district manager was defensively shooting down every concern that was brought up. I made the observation that perhaps we had communication difficulties. The district manager quickly snapped that I was wrong and we communicated just fine. It was not a big deal, but that was my moment. It was a moment in which the absurdity of the situation was too much. I nodded, smiled, muttered something about "sure we do," and quit right then. Reason I quit too. The manager thought she was better than everybody because she did everything without telling us. I told her to communicate it with us better and there would be no more problems. She said she was and I quit. Long story short, I got held up as an overnight baker by another employee, knife to my throat, the works. I wrote about it before I think. The police came and the issue was mostly resolved. They found her pretty quick since we all recognized her. I still worked the rest of my shift in a bit of a haze, but didn't want to leave the company hanging the next day with nothing to sell or for the other baker to be alone. The opening manager, whom I already couldn't stand, came in and noticed the police dust everywhere and asked what happened. She was pretty nonplussed to hear we had gotten held up, but was incredibly concerned that one of the batches of bread wasn't glossy because I had forgotten to close the vent when it got steamed. I walked out, even though it was already the end of my shift, so it wasn't a huge deal. I just called a GM and said I wouldn't be coming in that night, or ever. I had informed my boss and the supervisor that I would be unable to work on Sunday because I would be attending one of my close friend's funeral. Near the end of the funeral I received a phone call from my supervisor that I need to get to work because she had an appointment to get her hair done and couldn't reschedule. I reminded her that I was at a funeral and she didn't believe me, so I took a picture of myself in front of the funeral home and sent it to her. She calls me back and says that it's not an excuse and that if it's not family it's not important that I be there. And I lost IT on her. What would you know about my friends and family? Who do you think you are to tell me not to grieve over the loss of someone I was close to? You need this work done so bad? Find someone else to do it for you, because I won't be back, ever, and hung up the phone. I get a call about 30 minutes later from my boss asking me to please reconsider quitting and that he will make sure that work gets covered for today. I tell him no, so long as my supervisor is still with the company, I will not be back. He acknowledges my anger and lets me be on my way. About 2-3 months later I get a call back from him asking me if I can work part-time for him because my supervisor is unable to cover all the work I was doing. And I told him that he would need to double my previous hourly wage if he wanted me back. He considered it for about a week and decided that that would not be feasible and thanked me for all the years of hard work I put into his company. Worked at a family-owned coffee shop back in the day. The owner's daughter was notoriously lazy and would lounge around reading the newspaper and eating all day while bossing the non-family employees around mercilessly. I never called in sick, was the only person able to do the catering because I actually had a driver's license, and they completely depended on me. I came in 3 minutes late for a shift one day, and the owner's daughter decided that she wanted to make a thing out of it. I would have taken correction for being late from her mother or her husband, both of whom worked very hard, but I was not about to take a verbal abuse from a pseudo-manager who contributed nothing to the success of the business. As it was, I refused to apologize, which infuriated her, so she started saying things like, "Well, don't let it happen again. You're making a habit of it." This wasn't true, so I told her she needed to list every single time I had been late right then and there because if it was a habit, surely she would have this information available. She couldn't, because it wasn't a habit, and I told her that if she ever spoke to me like that I would quit on the spot and that she would be in huge crap for it because they depended on me and she knew it. I won that fight, but she tried cutting an attitude with me a couple weeks later, not realizing that I had been interviewing for another job already and had been offered a position. I quit later that day, cited her behavior as my reason for declining to keep part-time hours at the shop to supplement my part-time hours at this other job, and she got massively chewed out by her family. Her husband's take on it was, "We can't keep changing employees like we change our effing underwear just because you feel the need to be a bee. We can't keep changing employees like we change our effing underwear just because you feel the need to be a bee." Many people working in positions that give them a shred of power need to realize this. Work and jobs don't have to be such crap if everyone would kinda do their part to make it work. Yeah, I quit a $100K plus job. Back in 2005 I was working for a company that produced healthcare conferences. All of the sales and business development responsibilities for a couple of their events were mine, and my team included a conference producer, a marketing manager, and we shared some lower level employees with other groups. The producer resigned to take another position at a different company, so the CEO asked me to handle her job until they could find a replacement. No problem. I added that role onto my already ridiculous calendar, so now I'm working with all of our sponsors, finding new ones and putting together the conference program. A month goes by and no replacement. Then the marketing guy quits. Same story. I'm asked to handle his job as well. Now I'm doing the work of 3 fairly higher level people and still killing my sales numbers, but I'm getting worn down. Working 8-6 or so in the office. Going home, eating dinner and then working to 9 or 10 most nights. Maybe a couple weeks later we're in a meeting with all of the company managers from the various event teams and the CEO asks why I haven't confirmed a speaker recommended by one of our top tier sponsors, and I tell him I reached out 2 days prior, but haven't heard back. He freaking goes off on me about how I'm not doing the job I'm being paid for and I need to be more proactive and all this other crap. During his tirade, every manager in corporate is staring in shock because they knew how much I had been doing in addition to my job. I don't say a word. The meeting ends and I go back to my office where I fire up my computer and email my resignation to my VP. I told her I couldn't give notice and it was my last day. She calls the CEO and the two of them come into my office and ask why I'm leaving, and I say that I'm doing the job of 3 people for 1 salary and him yelling was the last freaking straw. He apologizes, asks me to please stay because the event is about 90 days away and they'll be screwed if I leave. Nope, I'm leaving. Finished packing my desk, stopped by HR to say goodbye and let them know I expect to be paid my commissions owed, and I left. I had put in my 2 weeks notice and was training for my new job after work. I had been working a set schedule for 8 months, one that did not work with my education or my volunteer time with the animal shelter, and that was part of why I was leaving. Suddenly, my set schedule was changed to split shifts. Every day of my 2 weeks was now a 4-hour split shift with 2 hours in between so that I couldn't train at my new job. And you know, that wasn't even the final straw. No, that would be the closing crew the night before. I had left them an urgent order and said, listen, I don't care what else you do or don't do, you must get this order complete. This order was for a customer who was verbally abusive, but my manager was too much of a wimp to tell her to GTFO and said if I filed assault charges for her hitting me with beanbags, I would be fired. They didn't finish it. The customer was waiting in the parking lot when I pulled up 30 minutes before the store opened. The order wasn't done. Nothing was done. I walked. Man, even when you're angry you are so dang polite, dude, lol. I got Christmas vacation ed. My law firm won a huge verdict, got a massive payout from our 35% cut, and everyone was celebrating. It was a smallish firm that only had about 10 associates, but was pretty top heavy with a bunch of partners. According to some semi-standard norms among plaintiffs' firms, the firm cut should have been divided in such a way that each associate was looking at roughly a $25,000 bonus. Ours was primarily a defense firm, so there were no written rules or bylaws for the division of an award that big. When I say that the associate bonus was a small fraction of what the senior partners received, I'm underselling how big their cut was. I had fellow associates who were looking to this bonus for a down payment on a house, a new car to replace an 18-year-old Beta, you name it. When the checks were finally issued, rather than $25,000, each associate, regardless of seniority, got $1.5K. That's it. It's a measure of how much the partners knew that they fricked us that when we took off for the day at noon to go drown our sorrows, we didn't get a single call wondering where we were or asking us to come back to the office. To add insult to injury, a partner rolled into the parking garage with a brand new luxury car a week later with a vanity plate with the case name on it. Within 6 months, all but one associate had quit the firm, myself included. The legal industry would be a great place to work if it weren't for all the lawyers and clients. You have been visited by the cook dog. Comment: without food there is no paradise, so that you never burn the stakes. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.